We live everywhere. Live everywhere, looks like. Yep. What's going on? Good morning to you, good people. Good morning to you. Day 59, 49, 48. Day 48, day 48. Meditation. I got time today. The Mrs. Cynthia just did a live last night on different things, different aspects. One of the things that's a real passion of mine is the continued arrest of the children. I was arrested. I was charged as an adult as a child for marijuana at 14, but I was abducted at 13 and held and interrogated for over 12 hours, me and a group of friends who were my age and younger than 13. Um, and we were beat up and interrogated for over 12 hours in Long Island, New York, at as children at 13 years old. And my first arrest was an adult felony for marijuana at 14 years old. And if you check out the school to prison pipeline, you know, this is being directed to children. I don't know what type of people we have, but it's the consensus seems to be like, oh, you didn't go through that. The news is making it up. The news is making it up. You know, I don't think nobody can make a white supremacy, dude. We dealing with more than just police arrest and police aggression, which we are dealing with that, but we're dealing with a system called white supremacy, which doesn't even need hate to operate. White supremacy doesn't need hate to operate. White supremacy doesn't need racism to operate. White supremacy can thrive and operate extremely well without racism and without hate. So we keep trying to, or civil rights, we keep trying to pin white supremacy down and call it different names generation after generation. Now to address white supremacy, they want to call it equity. And our ancestors in the 60s, to address white supremacy, they want to call it civil rights. But it's the same thing that our ancestors were dealing with civil rights in the 60s. Same thing with our ancestors were dealing with Tulsa, Oklahoma. Same thing our ancestors was dealing with the Red Summers. Same thing we was dealing with cattle slavery. And as soon as we were let out of cattle slavery, that's when the gross attacks really started. People talk about, oh, stop talking about slavery. It's kind of hard not to talk about slavery when everything we're dealing with is the product of that monster. And white folks didn't get super aggressive with us until after slavery. They were happy because we was commodity. They couldn't just go off and kill us. But as soon as we were freed, and we freed ourselves through all of these similar wars going on across America, they was like, yo, we got to strike a deal with the blacks. We got to let them go, or we're not gonna have nothing. Because of the Seminole Wars, they try to make it seem like there was this docile thing going on. But how many of you, if so you see somebody taking candy from a baby, would you intervene? Would you say something? Would you stop and do something about it? And I'm talking to all you spiritual folks who go do the meditation, who do yoga, and use it as a reason to disconnect from people, who study the sciences, the metaphysics, the quantum mechanics, and use it as a reason to disconnect and not be a part of this thing called living. You understand me? We really here, we living, we go do our spiritual practices and we hop back into living. You understand? We don't do our spiritual practice and then stay away from folks because they might, take away from our spirituality. So that's how I see, a lot of these things, me being a spiritual man, um, and an empath. I see and I feel for folks. And, whether I'm going through it or not, just so happens I did go through this war on drugs. And a lot of folks who don't understand that they went through it also. You didn't have to get arrested to experience the war on drugs. If you black in America, you going through war on drug shit, period. What do you think that school system is? Full of white supremacy. War on drugs is just a modal, a name that they use to attack black folks. They can get rid of the war on drugs like they saying the war on drugs is over, but they still attacking black folks, like for cannabis. So one of the things that we don't understand about this cannabis thing, y'all, while everybody's getting their licenses and opening up and saying, oh, cannabis is legal, the reason why they legalized the cannabis was to stop the aggression toward the black community, but more importantly, to stop the aggression toward our children. The police arrest, but you can't really stop that unless you You educate the public, educate the police. Hey, the war is over. They haven't said that. They haven't said the war is over. So you still having children being locked up. You got businessmen telling you that the war is over. Businessmen trying to open up cannabis businesses. They're telling you that the war is over. You have these activists telling you that the war is over, telling you that this is a remedy for the war on drugs when it's not. It's not a remedy for the war on drugs. It can't be. It's impossible for legal cannabis businesses to be a remedy for the war on drugs if you still got people getting locked up. And my wife was talking about how on the CCC page, the guidance, they never talk about the sale of marijuana. That's what I got charged with: sale of marijuana, sale of marijuana, sale to a minor as a minor. I was a minor, and they charging black teenagers with selling to their friends with sale to a minor. So these are very serious charges. These are federal charges now. And the arrest rate, and you've seen the ACL report, the disparity of arrests increase in black and brown people, black and brown neighborhoods. So what do we get from this cannabis legalization? What do we really get from it? And you know, are you going to allow them to continue to steal the youth of our children for cannabis? Like literally, they're letting white children do all types of drugs right now in Massachusetts, methadone, mile. They're building hospitals so white folks can go shoot up and do their hard drugs. White children can go do their hard drugs, but they still running down on black children for weed. They still running down on black children for weed. Anything they can find black children doing, they're going to throw the book at them. If it's discretion, hey, same cop, same charge, but if it's a black person involved, they're going to imagine the person's criminality to the umpteenth power. If it's a white child involved, they're going to immediately go to work at defragging, lowering the charges. They're going to immediately go at work at being more objective and subjective. But, well, you know what? Even though this white child was out here selling pounds of weed, we're going to hit him with, possession. They got a black child selling an ounce of weed. They're going to hit him with bulk possession. You're going to get hit with bulk possession of a Schedule I drug. If you're in a car, they're going to hit you with trafficking. This is what we have to deal with in terms of unfair laws. So all y'all talking about, oh, you care about equity, which is a lie. They care about our business dealings, but they don't really care about us getting locked up. They don't care about the mass incarceration, but they real nosy when it comes to our business dealings. And they imagine that we're doing all type of illegal shit with our business dealings. We're selling our business dealings. We're selling our equity status away to MSOs. MSOs didn't need us. Your state sold equity status away to MSOs. Hundreds of licenses went to MSOs. MSOs ain't need us in Massachusetts. You understand? They ain't need us. Hundreds of licenses went to MSOs, yet the nasty rhetoric that's still being passed around. These EEs, these SEs, they're letting in MSOs, MSO businesses. All the EEs and SEs that got businesses, they got propped up by MSOs. Yeah, if you ask me if our state was responsible and paired us with individuals like the PIES program, paired us with these individuals, people making money in the industry, this is what this industry should be about. If individuals are going to come in here and make millions of dollars, why wouldn't they participate in our state's charge for equity, our legislative state's charge for equity? They didn't have to. All they had to do was pay their little money, pay to play, and get an illegal priority status, which they did not own. They did not meet the criteria for this illegal. That's why I call it an illegal priority status, with nobody talking about it. Hundreds of licenses went to illegal priority status, and nobody is talking about it. What's an illegal priority status? The legislation said the businesses opening up during equity had to be operating and dispensing in Massachusetts. Had to be operating and dispensing. The legislation says that the cannabis revenue is for the citizens of Massachusetts. So the legislation says the cannabis revenues for the citizens of Massachusetts. That's one. Secondly, it said that you had to be operating and dispensing, like RMDs who have been serving the medical Massachusetts community, who have been paying taxes in Massachusetts. They were allowed to open up alongside equity businesses. This was, maybe how many RMDs were active at the time? Around 50, 55, something like that, right? About 50 plus RMDs would have opened up. That would equate to 50 plus licenses because they would have opened up. They would have had to open up in their establishment. They weren't allowed to go get a new building and open up. Then they opened up they created a whole new equity priority criteria, left it open for 500 days for MSOs. 500 days. Companies had the decision to decide, people with money decided whether they were going to come and get the equity status or not, pay for their equity status or not. 500 days. The CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission, created an illegal priority status that freaking undersold, undermined everybody in Massachusetts trying to get a cannabis license. You gave away 300 plus licenses with this illegal priority status you created, with this illegal equity status you gave them, almost 300. How does that help the citizens of Massachusetts? How does that help the citizens of Massachusetts? How does that rectify the wrongs done to the victims of marijuana mass incarceration? It don't. It don't. How? The PIES program, paired with these companies and their PIPs, it will effectuate the legislative charge. But just letting these folks in with a pay to play, how does that effectuate legislation? How does that move the needle for equity? It doesn't. It don't. So, why you talking about all of the hoopla and all of the fanfare about Black folks not being mass incarcerated behind cannabis no more? This is not true. How the CCC put the data out, it made it seem like, any cannabis arrest is just civil disobedience or civil charges. No, it's still federal. It's still a federal crime, you liar. It's still a federal crime. I bumped into, the first time I bumped into Shailene was at Shailene Title was at Harvard Law. And this was before any CCC, any Cannabis Control Commission, nothing. And I didn't know she was from Colorado. I didn't know nothing about Shailene. But I spoke to her and I actually gave her my arrest thing I had written up about what happened to me in Massachusetts in 2016, my secret indictment. But I also had some experience with Colorado. I had been in and out of Colorado for some time. I knew some people in Colorado, some families in Colorado. And I used to go to Colorado, and get cannabis. You understand? So this was prior to Colorado going recreational. Prior to Colorado going recreational, everything in Colorado was beautiful. It was beautiful in Colorado. It was beautiful. Cannabis was flowing beautifully in Colorado. After the arrest, after legalization, I went to Colorado as just happy to go into the dispensaries. I had a good time going into the dispensaries, but I couldn't get with my regular folks, my families. Knew some farmers out in Colorado. I couldn't get with my regular folks who I've been dealing with for years. They were scared shitless because I'm like, scared of what? They were like, the feds. The feds was everywhere locking people up. Everybody, all the states praising Colorado for legalization, and they was doing mass incarceration 2.0. People were scared. You couldn't get a pound out of Colorado for nothing. And probably you still can't. Because as soon as they went recreational, the feds swarmed Colorado. It became a place where the feds could really eat. And if you look at the arrest rate, it increased by 50% in Black and brown neighborhoods for cannabis. The arrest rate during Colorado's legalization increased by 50%. So I knew this because I was on the ground. I didn't know the numbers yet, but I knew it was ugly in Colorado. The numbers, they didn't come out and talk about the numbers. This was before anybody came out and talked about what the numbers was in Colorado. I was like, yo, they still arresting niggas out in Colorado for weed. And Colorado's going legal with all the other drugs. Guess what? They still going to be arresting Black folks for these drugs also. So they figured out how to go legal and still arrest Black folks. And I was just like, whoa, this is some alchemy. So I was like, yo, this is what they're going to do in Massachusetts. They're going to go legal and then they're going to continue to arrest us. This was my campaign from the very beginning. Didn't think I was going to get no license. Didn't know about didn't get in the equity program because it wasn't it just didn't really pertain to me. Here it is. I went through this shit, marijuana mass incarceration. They open up equity programs that didn't pertain, that I didn't fit. but white folks fit. Other folks who ain't been arrested fit. So they opened up an equity campaign talking about they're gonna do something for black folks who was mass incarcerated. But most of us, when we read the criteria, we didn't fill out the paperwork because we didn't fit the criteria. My wife was like, "I'm gonna fill it out. I fit." You know what I'm saying? And she filled out and she got it. You understand? Got the first, and then I got social equity later on. But my passion was to continue the rest race. And then when I saw that Shailene co-signed Britt McBride, was that the one who did the Kay Doyle? When Shailene was co-signing Kay Doyle's marijuana task force initiative. Oh my God. That's Britt McBride. Britt McBride is blonde hair, right? Blonde. Kay Doyle. if it was Kay Doyle's uh marijuana task force initiative. She co-signed that. And here it is. This lady was sitting in the social justice chair. This red woman was sitting in the social justice chair, and she didn't give a fuck about black folks cannabis task force. She was co-signing. I was like, nah, something is wrong here. How you sitting in the social justice chair was supposed to be representative of the victims of marijuana mass incarceration, but you co-signing a task force. And I spoke to you earlier about mass incarceration 2.0 in Colorado. Still didn't know that Shailene was from Colorado at this point. Still didn't know that she opened up and legalized Colorado. Didn't know nothing about it. Didn't do my investigations yet. But my passion was to continue to rest because I lived it. They charged me as a third. I have teenagers now. And I'm like, damn, my teenagers, they babies. My teenagers is babies. Here it is at 14. My daughter's 16 years old. I couldn't imagine my daughter being arrested for no weed. But at 14, you arrested me for weed and then charged me as an adult. And you guys are still doing this. And you guys are going to do this in this state that's legal and other states that aren't legal. That's the biggest travesty right there. Here it is. They figured out how to have white and black cannabis. That's what my book is about. My first book is about Massachusetts jumping Jim Crow for cannabis, Jim Crow, white and black laws. So white and black cannabis all throughout Massachusetts and throughout these other states. The second book I wrote that my wife and I wrote together, it's about Jim Crow in all of these states, Jim Crow cannabis laws in all of these states. And we bring up how they're rolling out some of these equity programs. We focus heavily on Massachusetts, though, in the second book. But we also talk about the other states who are doing the similar same things with this Jim Crow cannabis, white and black cannabis. That's what it is. It's a sophisticated Jim Crow white and black cannabis, just by a different name. So that's my passion. The arrest and the attacks on children through our school systems. People think the war on drugs was just people getting locked up, but they had to create the criminality. They had to create these child predators, these child soldiers. So the school system was a big part of creating these child soldiers. With this white supremacy indoctrination that you give children. Here it is. White supremacy existing fine in the school systems. Don't need no racism. Don't need no hate. But we can subjugate black children without hate and without racism through this white supremacy. See, that's what we need to be talking about. We need to stop figuring out these elusive terms because we so smart. We want to call it equity. We so smart. We want to call it discrimination. We so smart. We want to call it racism. We so smart. We want to call it civil rights. At the end of the day, it's white folks behaving badly through this white supremacy shit. That's at the end of the day. It's all white supremacy. And you can take away all of those things we mentioned. You can take away racism. You can take away hate. You can take away all of these modals, and white supremacy will still exist as long as the system exists. White supremacy. Black folks can't get the housing they want to get. We deal with real estate. We have black people with over 800 credit score. Over 800 credit score, and the bank was rejecting a loan. And white folks, they putting stuff together. I got a dude who ain't even got a real job, dude, and got approved for a house. White boy. Ain't even got no real job and got approved for a house. Black people got jobs, been on the job for years, 20 years, got an 8-something credit score, and they give them all, and it's all hell for them to get a home. All hell to get a home. And they treat them like they ain't good enough. They treat them like they got an 8-something credit score. And you giving them hell on to get a house. That's in banking. real estate, housing. Everywhere we go, we got this white supremacy in America because it's taught in the school systems. To me, that's the biggest travesty, how it's taught to our children. To me, that shows me that you are so fearful of Black people that you will ride on us as children, that you will attack us as children to freaking with this white supremacy. And white supremacy is a big old, you are less than, big old psychological, you are less than. You never did anything in history. You never added anything of value to history other than slavery. This is a lie. This is a lie. We don't know our real history, you know, because it goes against white supremacy to teach white children and Black children that Black people discovered every motherfucking thing, that Black people taught white people how to bathe. We was here for millions of years conservatively. We wouldn't know how to teach you how to bathe. We wouldn't know how to teach you how to talk. We wouldn't know how to teach you how to build a building. We wouldn't know how to teach you how to build structures and communities and families and stuff. Castles, castles, the first castles in Africa. So it's not a disrespect to white folks to say that we taught you how to do everything. It's a disrespect to us to say that we've been here for millions of years and here white folks came up out of the caves out in the caves in the Caucasus Mountains. It's not a disrespect to say white folks came out the ground, and when they came out the ground and when they came out the mountains, we taught them. How's that disrespect? We was here for millions of years. It's disrespect for you to say that you came out the caves and the ground and the mountain and you taught these dumb Black folks who just been sitting around the earth for years, millions of years, who don't know how to read, write, build a building. That's what we taught in American schools. We are taught in American schools, Black folks ain't know how to do nothing. And thank God for slavery. Thank the white man for populating the entire globe with slaves from Africa. And that's not true. You have Black folks everywhere that white people crash landed their boats in. You know, you had the barbarians who were sailors. We have an extensive history of navigating the seas. We had the monsoons, the Mons. You understand? We just know monsoons as a word of some weather, but the Mon were people who follow behind the Mon. They named the monsoons this weather condition, and they would follow behind the monsoon seasonally to travel because it would create current on the ocean, so we could get to point A to point B. So we were sailors. We were all of this stuff. So to teach Black children that we weren't nothing, we didn't do anything. The Greeks bragged about going to Africa to study. But this is where white people start their history lesson with us, the Greeks. They don't ever talk about the Grimaldis, who were the Black Greeks, or they don't talk about the fact that the Greek wasn't a white civilization. Greek was, you know, a mixed culture, mixed civilization. It was all types of colorful people who were Greeks. So it wasn't now in school we're taught all Greeks were white. You know, they had the big plagiarism of the statues. We're suffering from thousands of years of plagiarism, you know, and they want to tell us that we have no history. And I don't need your reparations. We don't need your money. The only thing we need you to do is stop lying to us of who we was. And we'll fix it in one generation. We'll fix it in one generation. If you start teaching the grade school children now from first grade to 12th grade, who they are, real history, don't care about Black, white, don't care about racism, don't care about white supremacy, just laying down the facts of the history as we know it and we discovered it, you're going to find a lot of Black folks throughout our lessons in American public school. And they don't want to do that. They don't want to give us, you know, they don't want to tell you. They tell you about the castles in Europe. They don't tell you about the first castle. Castle is an African word. They tell you about Europe. They don't tell you that every time you say the word Europe, you're saying the Black woman is God. Every time you say Europe or European, you are saying the Black woman is God. That's our culture. That's our culture. We did that with our cultures. We named things after women. We edified women deification, women deities. So Europe is a Phoenician, African Phoenician goddess's name, Europa. You understand? So every time you say Europe or European in America, when we say, yo, he's European, we thinking white. That's how much they stole our culture and dressed themselves in our culture. They dress themselves in our words and they wear them like, oh, this has always meant white. This is white. No, you are calling yourself a Black goddess if you say you're European. You are giving ode to the Phoenician goddess of those people, Carthaginians. That was their goddess, Europa. It was Carthaginian god. Carthage was one of the biggest greatest military strategists and people, military people of our day, they used to say the sun does not set on the Carthaginian Empire. So the Carthaginian Empire spanned the globe. But we don't know about our history. And you're doing this to children. It's a psychological attack. We haven't addressed from Ruby Bridges when you guys were forcing, what's up, Rosemary? When you guys were forcing Ruby Bridges, when we were forcing Ruby Bridges in the schools, we didn't do nothing about what they were supposed to teach us and how they were supposed to teach us. You know, we never addressed that, you know, and I did the flip around for somebody. I said, imagine a little white girl had to go to school with angry mobs of black people on both sides. And this little white girl was escorted by several black police officers, several black military police officers, and a black captain into an all-black school. This one little white girl. I don't know how old Ruby Bridges was at the time. She was a little white girl, a little black girl. But imagine it was a little white girl and black people throwing stuff at this little white girl. And this little white girl got to go up in the school with all black teachers. Some of them don't like her. Most of them don't like her. She might find one or two that might rock with her. But she's surrounded by all this black hate just to go get an education. Ruby Bridges is still alive, y'all. Ruby Bridges is still alive and breathing. And you talking about, well, what's wrong with black folks? What's wrong with black folks? So much hate and anger directed at black children just wanting to learn. What you think they taught that little black girl when she was in school? Ruby Bridges. They taught her she wasn't shit. And as they continue to teach our children that they wasn't shit, they never had a place in history. You know, so if white folks want to really get rid of the white supremacy, they really need to do something about these schools. They really need to stop attacking children. And the CCC never mentions what happens when a teenager sells weed. They're going to get charged as an adult. You still charging teenagers. I'm 40 years old. You charge me as an adult at 14. I'll be 41 next month. You charge me adult at 14 years old for weed, and you still doing this 20 some odd years later, feeding the beast, black flesh, black children. No recourse, no sympathy, no compassion for black children. After we go through these white supremacy indoctrination schools, and those who have strong spirits like myself, we just consider bad kids, getting suspended all the time, getting kicked out, pushed out into the streets because you couldn't get this white supremacy indoctrination. So if we really talking about doing something, new white folks, all you new white folks who ain't had who ain't creating no, you was just like me. I'm a new black person. I was born and this shit was here. All you white people who was born and the hate was here. The white supremacy was already here. I was born in 1980. It was already here. I didn't make it up. I didn't create it. I ain't the first one to fight or push against it. You can go look at our history. Every generation, there's people who are raised up who push against this shit. My question is, all you white folks who benefiting off of this shit, all you new white folks, why are you going to perpetuate the white supremacy? Or are you going to abolish it? Because you benefit off it when your little white girl or white boys go to that school and they taught about white greatness and it's all a lie. You benefit from that. That child psychologically benefits off of that. When you got to look at all the white statues, a lot of them plagiarized. You don't find white folks in antiquity. You don't. You know, we won't. But we don't find white folks coming. You talking about 100 BC? We was on the 19th dynasty. Before you talking about white folks coming out of the caves and being educated, we were on our 19th dynasty, building shit that they still can't figure out how we built. So a lot of stuff is not being told about our history. We don't know our history. And that makes us all savages. White folks, black folks, that makes us savages as a people. Because that make white folks act totally different to these people who gave them everything. We gave you everything. And we don't have no hate in our blood. We ain't running around here like y'all. That's why I'm like, one, I saw this white boy destroying the George Floyd memorial. And I'm just like, what? The way white folks is out here acting, you would think we had them in slavery. You would think we cattle slave white folks, bred them and raised their children as slaves, and bred their children and raised them as slaves and bred them children. You would think we did that cattle slavery shit to white folks the way they hate black people, the way they treating us around America. You would think we did them dirty. You would think we had them in slavery. Black folks is running around this America without hate, without a vendetta, without vengeance in our heart or nothing. We ain't got no vengeance for white folks. We just try and do what they say so we don't get killed. We try and do what the public servants say so we don't get killed. We try not to make white people too jealous and envious so they don't, poor white folks don't come and kill us. That's what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You actually had poor white folks coming killing black families who are affluent, and that it didn't stop there. They're not nobody's talking about this. I never hear this when I hear the story of Tulsa, Oklahoma. But you got to tell it, white folks. You went and killed these folks, and you would take an affluent black family, you would take their stuff, take their house, take their business, legally take it, because you would take their family name, that black family name, and put it on you. You got white folks who dress their entire family in black people's last names to take their wealth, to take their property, to take their land. So if my name is Johnson, I'm a white boy. I ran up in the black family house, rich, wealthy black family. I killed them. Their name is Macklemore. Now, instead of Johnson, my family's name is Macklemore. So as a white boy, I done put the black family's last name on my entire white family. My children have children. They name themselves Macklemore. Their children have children. We're Macklemore. We're the Macklemores. You know, we're the Macklemores. They're not talking about that. They talk about how slaves took on slave masters' last names, but they don't talk about how poor white folks in America took on black people's last names. And you see that in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's well documented in the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre. These people, these white folks went in there, these poor white folks went in there, and it wasn't about hate, it was about jealousy and envy. Oklahoma, they were doing import-export trades with other countries. We had import-export trade routes with other countries. We had our own trains, planes, buses. You understand? We had our own sports teams. Now, this was during segregation. Now, during integration, this doesn't turn into a big history lesson, meditation. Now, during integration, we don't have anything. We don't control any industry. But during segregation, we controlled entire industries. So when we talk about segregation and anti-segregation, we're talking about it from a stamp. I can speak intelligently on it now because I'm living segregation. My whole life, I didn't experience segregation. We've been desegregated my whole life. So I'm living the product of that decision that was made in the 60s. And I'm looking, and we have nothing from that. From segregation, during segregation, we had buildings and businesses, but we also had white aggression and white hate. You see, we desegregated to stop the violence on our black communities. We had communities at the time. We don't have no black communities today. During segregation, during desegregation, there are no black communities. No place where black people put their wealth, put their information, and grow as a community. Everybody who's in these quote unquote black communities, which passes off as community, they can't wait to get up out of these nightmares. You understand where we are living at? So we don't have no communities. You understand? So there's a lot of stuff that's not being talked about in school. And if we knew who we were, we wouldn't need your reparations. We wouldn't need your quote unquote handouts. Everybody's giving their history. Everybody's allowed to know who they are. They're so intimidated and scared by black people, they will not tell us who we are. And you have to understand, black people, that makes you powerful. That gives me a lot of pride. That gives me a lot of pride to say, damn, we so dangerous. They're attacking us as children. And I'm not doing it as a person on the outside looking in. I was one of those children. I couldn't read and like that. I was a functional reader in 3rd grade. And they talk about it in School to Prison Pipeline. The people who go into jail is the people who can't. You could tell who going to jail by those people who can't read. I had 6 open cases in high school. I was looking at 15 to 22 years when I was 19 years old. I was looking at 15 to 22 years in jail when I was 19 years old. You understand? My spirit and my energy is just too strong to be held and kept and caged and some bullshit. But that was dope. We had a dope ass talking session. I should stop this and restart it. Should I stop it and restart it? Just so how long has it been going? How? 30 minutes? Just wait so Just wait so the meditation ain't so long. Should I stop? I'll just go. I'll just meditate. We'll just meditate right now like this. 34 minutes. It won't be the longest. I got one that's out that's 2 hours long. So, oh, you know what? We got some tunes today. But I just want to piggyback off of that. Like, yo, me being an empath, the children often run across my mind. The children, and what are you planning on doing with the children as us adults? We get in these cannabis businesses and stuff. We get the cannabis is legal, but you plan on still attacking these black children. I know you do because you are doing it. So I'm not going to go into guru state, meditate for an hour, then come back out like, ooh, nothing is wrong with the world. No, I'm going to use these meditation. I'm going to use my yoga. I'm going to use the stuff that I read, the quantum mechanics, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Shout out to Dr. Joe Dispenza. Powerful book. I'm going to read these things and then come back into the world and see how I can affect it in a positive, strong way. I don't give a fuck about death. I don't give a fuck about somebody killing me. If they still killing black folks for speaking up, that should show you, black folks, we need to go to the white supremacy of this. We don't need it to be civil rights because we didn't get no civil rights. We still, the same shit I'm talking about today, they was talking about in the 60s. Read the book, The Miseducation of the Negro. If you doubt our ancestors' intellectual prowess to know what the fuck was going on, read The Miseducation of the Negro. Powerful, powerful book. I'm guilty of thinking that our ancestors, you know, I'm guilty. Reading this book, I was like, well, damn. In this book that was in the 60s, they talking about 100 years ago. He wrote this book in the 60s, talking about 100 years ago, white folks have been to Africa and knew who we was. So you're talking about in the 60s, 100 years, he talking about in the 60s, same thing I just said today about black folks being these and having a history. He talking about that in the book in the 60s. And you mean to tell me they don't know who we are enough to put it in the school systems? Powerful, powerful book. If you want to get your mind blown, if you want to be humbled about who you are and who our ancestors were, because we often taught that our ancestors were stupid and passive and pliable. But powerful book for you to go check out. Without further ado, meditation. Let's get into this powerful, powerful meditation. Good love, good energy. We want to erase all of our existence. We want to erase our existence by erasing our titles, clearing ourselves of all titles, clearing ourselves of all responsibility. When you clear yourself of your titles, you clear yourself, you disconnect yourself, you cut off those responsibilities that go with those titles. So we want to trust the universe, want to trust the energies around us to cloak us, to embrace us. And we just want to free fall for a minute. Like we're going to free fall with no thoughts, just for a hot second. You don't got to do it for the whole hour. You could do it for 15 minutes. You could do it for good free, 10 minutes or whatever. 15 minutes is a good demarker, of no thought. And you want to just kind of just relinquish that to that, Thoughts come from our titles. Thoughts come from who we believe we are. But we were something way before we had these flesh suits on. We came from someplace else into this expression, put ourselves in this flesh suit, cloaked ourselves in flesh in our mother's womb, the etheric materializer. When we get pushed out of the etheric materializer, but we came from someplace else. When we leave this flesh suit, we'll be going to someplace else. Do yourself a favor, don't take fear with you. And a good way to not take fear with you is to confront every fear now and relegate in your psyche, hey, I can die tomorrow when I get into that infinite blackness, that infinite energy space. There's nothing to fear. Matter of fact, that's who I am. That's who I've been more than I've been alive in this flesh suit 50, 60, 80, 100 years. But I want you to love. I want you to love living. When I got this information and I was exposed to this information, I longed for death more than I longed for living. I don't want you to do that. I heard a beautiful saying, a beautiful meme. It said, bloom where you are planted. And that was powerful to me because we're planted here. And you get all this information and you become hard, rigid, and all of these things will retard your growth. And you might not care. You might not care. This place is so filthy. People being hurt, child trafficking, human trafficking, sexual abuse, violence. This place is so ladled with filth. Some of you don't care. I can leave here tomorrow. I can leave here. And I was in that space. I'm gonna be honest with you. I was in that space. And I struggle with that space. I struggle with being in that space because I see the children who are hungry. I see the children who are abused. When I look at my children and I look how pliable they are, and they have these eyes, and they look at you, and they're just ready to take whatever direction and instruction you give them. And you got people who abuse that, manipulate that, commit violence against children, rape children, starve children, exploit children. And then you look at the laws and the books that protect children, there's damn near none. So this can be relegated as an extremely filthy place if you feel for others other than yourself. And I do. But I'm here to tell you, bloom where you are planted. No amount of cynicism, no amount of negativity can help somebody else out in these situations. So I urge us all to bloom where we are planted. We don't know the big picture. We can't see past the unquantifiable. But bloom where you are planted. And this is what this meditation period is about for me. Blooming where I'm planted. Yoga is about blooming where I'm planted. Doing business, all of these things, um, instilling generational wealth into my family lineage. These things are all about building a Black community. We need a Black beautiful community. What's wrong with that? White folks, don't be intimidated by us turning the value of the Black up. Black is beautiful. Black is beautiful, white folks. And you know it. You know Black is beautiful. We the entertainers. We the ones who thinking up all the music, everything you like and love. Country music, Black people. Blues, Black people. Rap, Black people. I try to tell you, 100 years from now, white folks gonna be saying that the rappers, the niggas was them. Because it's such a, you telling me Black folks, thugs, these are the modern day cowboys. These are the modern day Wild West vigilantes who don't care about the law. And if you research the cowboys, a cowboy, boy means slave. Cowboys, these were slaves, Black slaves, bringing cattle back and forth, east to west, man. So I want to get into our meditation, but for some reason I'm doing a lot of talking, a lot of teaching. But you're gonna have white folks swearing up and down they was the rappers, they was the niggas in the 90s and all that. They're gonna show you Tupac, he gonna be white. They're gonna show you Biggie Smalls, he gonna be a big white boy. I'm trying to tell you, 100 years from now, mark my words. So we have to get away from the self-shame. Black folks, we are glorious folks. And just get rid of everything. We just gonna let go of everything in this meditation, man. Self-love, good energy. Let's bloom where we are planted.